Hi there, this is Michael Stone with the second series in my Red Club Leak Finder project. The first series, if you haven't seen it, featured me playing a Red Club Daily Tournament, and in this second edition, it is not me playing, but EyesofShiva has volunteered to let me review her hand history from the Red Club Sunday Big Game from December 15th. The Big Game is, as its title would indicate, the biggest buy-in tournament of the Red Club week, and usually features the largest prize pool and the largest first place prize, and in theory the best play from the better players. So this is EyesofShiva, who played it, as I said, on December 15th. We're going to get into this now. A couple things to point out. If you haven't watched the first video, you may be wondering what these little graphics are next to each player's name. I will put a link over here to that part of the first video which explains what the HUD stats are, and that'll all be explained in the first video, so you can go watch that now before you continue on. If you watch the first video, you should be up to speed on what these numbers mean. Hopefully we will get a chance to use these numbers in real-time situations to analyze Shiva's decisions. Now I should note that these numbers represent numbers from my database, and they do not necessarily represent EyesofShiva's reads, but I think we've both played enough of these turns that the stats should be relevant to her reads. The second thing I should note is that this is the first hand of the hand history she sent me, and as you can see, normally the tournament will start with everybody having 3,000 chips, but you can see that, Aces with Luck already has 9,000, Shiva herself starts with 3,300, we have someone with a half stack already. Shiva said that I think she overslept the 9 o'clock start time and didn't get to log in to Party Poker until 9:20, and then after that there were some, connectivity problems, so she didn't actually get to play a hand until 9:40, 40 minutes into the tournament. And this hand here starts at 9:48, so there were some hands that were cut off from the hand history. I'm not sure why there's missing hands, but I don't think it matters too much. As you can see, we are at the 30-60 level, and players are still, one player has 49 big blinds, some players with 80. Over here we have people in the 50 range, and some at 27. So there's still some relative deep stack poker. And since the big game has a longer blind structure, longer levels than the Red Club Daily, which I did last time, it'll be a lot longer before we get into short stack play. So you'll see a lot more deep stack play, a lot more mid stack play, and we may not even get into the short stack push fold part of the tournament. The last thing I should say is that I am only going to go over hands that are hero, or should I say victim plays, and try to only look at her play and not analyze the play of the other players at the table. Just to cut down on the time this video will take. If there's something glaring, glaring that affects what her future decisions might be, then we can talk about that quickly. But as it stands, I'm only going to try and talk about the decisions that the audience, me and EyesofShiva, have to make. So with that being said, I think we will get going here and talk about some poker. So here's the first hand. We are in the small blind, and we fold to a button raise. Seems reasonable. As you can see, we skipped ahead. We were in the small blind, we skipped our button, and now we are in the cutoff with pocket tens. So like I said before, we're only going to talk about hands that she played. So her button was obviously a non-event, and she didn't play it, so we're not going to talk about it. But pocket tens, we are obviously going to play it on the cutoff, so we will come in for a 4x raise, which, as long as you're consistent with your raise sizing, I don't mind raising to 4x. I'd rather it be something lower, especially, not especially, I'd rather it be something lower. There's no reason to go 4x. The reason, a lot of people think that with a big hand like pocket tens, you want to eliminate more players in the field and get a heads up, or steal the blinds. That's probably the best case scenario for a lot of people. But But what's really going to happen is you're only going to get hands to fold that are, well, normally you would only get hands to fold that are worse than yours and get action from hands that are better than yours. And when you get a hand that's better than yours to play, you're sitting there with pocket tens versus queens, and that's not a good situation. So I would lower your raise size. I think if you want to go to 3x before the antes kick in, that's fine, but 4x and higher than that it's a very fishy play. And if when you get into tournaments with more experienced players, if you're coming in for a 4x or even a 3x raise, they're going to immediately label you as a scared player, which will invite them to try and take advantage of you and bluff you off your hands or play back at you and put you in difficult spots, which is one of the benefits of raising less pre-flop. You're putting less chips into the pot while you only know 2 of your cards. You want to put more chips into the pot once you've seen 2 of your cards plus a lot of the flop, the turn, and the river. So that's just a helpful hint. Raise less pre-flop, which gives you a lot more room to play post-flop and gets you into less trouble when someone plays back at you. And she got the desired effect. She stole the blinds with a very strong hand rather than getting action from weaker hands. 9-7 offsuit in the big blind. We have min raise, basically a min raise. Call. We're getting, if I were to want our money here, I'd prefer it to be suited, but 81 big blinds from the open raiser. We have 57 big blinds behind, and it's only a min raise. I don't mind seeing a flop here and hoping to flop a monster and win a big pot. And we have flopped not quite a monster on such a board, but that's a pretty good hand against a raiser and a caller. We check, and the raiser checks behind. I guess that's okay versus 2 other callers if he has overcards or a pair of 4s or something like that. It gets checked through, and now we have an ace with a flush draw. So here's a good time to bet. Don't bet too much. You want action from your aces. I would bet something in the range of 175, 180. 120 is probably a bit small because any flush draw is going to come along for that. Any straight draw is going to come along for that. And okay, we get a lot of action here. I don't think we can necessarily fold because a lot of flush draws will make this play. If Addicted has hit his ace, ace 10, ace jack, ace queen, he's going to make this same play. So we pretty much have to call here. And we hold versus ace jack, so that's a nice little pot to win. Okay, this is a horrible hand to call a raise with, even a min raise. Jack 6 has absolutely no value. It's not suited, it's not connected. Don't be afraid to dump just to fold your big blind when you have a crappy hand. Now we get to check fold the flop. And we've given away a big blind for no reason. Folded to us in the small blind. I hope we come in for a raise here. We don't, that's a mistake. Even against a player who calls a lot pre-flop, as Punmaster is known to do, we have a pretty good ace, blind on blind. I want to raise it up, try to steal his big blind, and avoid playing post-flop out of position. Here we are keeping the pot small, which is fine, but we're playing post-flop out of position against a tougher player. And he raises, and we fold. That was the weakest possible way you could have played that hand. I wouldn't be surprised if Punmaster was raising any 2 cards there. He could have 7 deuce offsuit, which is why you want to take the initiative in the hand and be the aggressor and come out raising with your ace. That was a very weak way to play ace 8. And we are rewarded for a weak play in the very next hand with pocket aces on the button. So we come in for a min raise. Again, division calls. That's a fairly decent flop. Check. Keep checking, hope he catches up. Here comes the bet, and what's the raise going to be now? It's hard to put him on a flush because he didn't bet the turn. He only bet half the pot, so it's hard to decide if he's taking a stab with a 7 or with a 4. If he has any of those, I think he's calling the slightest bit of action, but not too much action. So we don't want to bomb away here, but you're going to raise. So, I don't know, min-raise might be fine. Min-raise 2.5x, something like that. 360. That seems like a fairly good size. That's a fairly decent size. He's going to call with his 9s, his 7s, his flushes for sure. He may get a raise with the flush. We'll see what happens. And he folds. So obviously he was just taking a stab with nothing as he checked through twice. So I guess checking twice was the only way you were going to get action there. So nice hand. Jack's in the big blind. God of Wrath is an aggressive player, and he limps the button. Aces with luck. I have very little experience with him, so as you can see, only 115 hands. But of those 115 hands, he has an 18% pre-flop raise number. And he's attacking the limper on the button with an oversized raise, so I want to put in a big re-raise here. Actually, no. The oversizedness of his raise, he's raising more than, let's see, quick math here. He's raising 4.5x. So he doesn't want the action, it looks like. So I think you're going to bump it up, but you're not going to blow the size of the pot. You're not going to blow him off his hand. 660, that's not bad. 2.5 or so. And as you can see, he didn't want any action because he folded to the re-raise. So I think the better play, now that we know that he didn't have anything, would have been a call. But that actually looks stronger than if you raise. And since you're going to raise, you picked a good bet size. It just so happened that he was making a steal, so you weren't getting action anyway. Queen Jack in the big blind. Checking your options fine. I don't mind leading out, but that is such a weak lead that anybody, that a good player is going to pounce on that, notice that you don't want the action, and raise you with any two cards, as God of Wrath does here. I don't know if he has the king, but he's certainly a good enough player to attack your weak lead. And since there's a flat behind, I think we're okay to fold here. Yeah, I don't like that call. Interesting. I see what you're doing. Because the king paired, it's less likely that one of our opponents has a king. So why not go ahead and take a stab at representing the king, or protecting against the flush draw or the straight draw, and you're making it small enough that if God of Wrath comes over the top again, you can fold, but he has to be strong to raise or to call you. So that's actually a fairly good bet. He does raise, and I think now we get away from it. There you go. And he did have the king, and turns out the full house. And he was outkicked for most of the way, but got there on the river. Yeah, so that's I like the lead out on the flop. I would have liked it to have been a bit bigger to represent a bit more strength. Quarter of the pot is a bit small and makes it seem weak. I like the lead out on the turn just to see the small lead on the turn, trying to represent the king when the second king hits. And that was a disciplined fold when the God of Wrath basically made the min raise, and there was a call behind. So that was a well played hand, I think. Tough spot. I think you lost the minimum, even though you tried to win the pot. Even though you gave yourself a good chance of winning the pot. Assume this is going to be a check fold, and it is. Pocket threes on the button. Sometimes I would raise here if the two limpers were weak, but I see these two. First of all, they both have big stacks. They're the two big stacks on the table. And second, from what I know and what I've seen so far, they are tricky, sticky, aggressive players. So I would not go for the steal here. I would just call behind and hope the flop is set. And now you can safely fold. 3-8 in the small blind. This is a problem. This is a habit I see a lot of players getting into, and it's a bad habit, is automatically calling the small blind when it's folded to you with any two cards. I understand the desire to do it. It's very cheap. You're getting 3-1 on your money. 3 antes. But I like to do this because you're going to be out of position after the flop for the whole hand. I like to have something with value. 8-3 does not have any value. It's you know, the bottom 5% of hands in all of Hold'em. I'd like to get in there. You know, 3-4 I'd rather have. 8-7 I'd rather have. A small pair I'd rather have. 8-3 offsuit has no value. I would just muck it and go on to the next hand, especially against a player like Punmaster, who we saw in the last hand when you limped with Ace-8. He just raised it up and you folded Ace-8. Now you're limping with 8-3. You're giving him the chance to again raise you up. And what are you going to do then? This time he checks. He bets, and we have to fold. That's again, it's like you had a gut shot. You could have called there, hope to hit your gut shot and win a big pot. But that was just weakly played and with a weak hand, and those are things you want to avoid. Take out the automatic limp from the small blind when it's folded to you. Play from your arsenal, except when you have a decent hand. 5-4, looks like we're going to play this hand. Do we come in for a raise? We do, with a min raise. That's nice. I like to see that. I like to see you raising with a wider variety of hands, not just waiting for big cards. Coming in there with a min raise with a small suited connector is a nice way to mix up your play and keep people off balance. If they know you're capable of raising with 5-4 as well as raising with aces, then they are going to have a harder time putting you on a hand post-flop. And you can represent a lot of hands post-flop or win big pots when the flop comes low or the flop comes high, giving you a chance to flop a monster and get it in versus a pair. Queen 10. At a full table, if you want to play this hand, I would come in for another min raise. I don't like open limping. It shows weakness. It takes away the aggressive initiative, which allows you to lead out post-flop with continuation bets and win the pots that way. If you're showing weakness pre-flop, it's hard to just turn around and show strength post-flop, unless you hit something big. If you were in this position with this hand and there was a limp and a limp and a limp, then you can limp behind with a nice suited connector like you have here. But I don't like opening for a limp, especially in an early position when somebody can raise behind and then you're put into a tough spot. So we'll see how this plays out. Ideally, you would like a lot of people to limp in, and you can play a cheap flop with a hand that has a lot of equity. That's easy to play. You're not hoping to hit a 10 or a queen. You're hoping to hit a flush draw, a straight draw, or even two pair. And you hit nothing. I assume there's going to be. Oh, hello. Okay, this is a case I was not prepared for. You're leading out just like in the previous hand when the king paired. You are correctly surmising that nobody has a king, otherwise they would have bet on the flop. Taking a nice little stab. I'm not sure the bet sizing. You're betting more than half the pot into 5-4 players. You could have gotten away with 2-6 or even something as low as 240, but I like the initiative. I like the bet. I like leading out when you deduce that nobody could possibly have a pair here. Yeah, nice hand. That's how good players pick up chips when they don't necessarily deserve them. They don't necessarily have the best hand. Alright, King 7 in the big blind. Lead out here, I assume. That's way too big. You don't need to bet full pot. I assume that you are not so much worried about Punmaster, but you're worried about Steph, who limped under the gun and is known to call with pretty much anything post-flop, so you're trying to put maximum pressure on him. But that's counterintuitive. You're only going to get him to call you if he beats you or if he has a superb draw. I would still come out with a smaller, let's say 40% pot bet, and hope that you are a good enough player to be able to play against him when he calls and you see a turn card. This way you're just blowing him off his draw. You basically, if if he's gonna call, if he's gonna chase his draw, you want to price him out of it, but not price him out of it too much that he's not gonna call. You sometimes want action with players calling with bad draws. This way, you're making sure he doesn't make a mistake and only comes after you when he beats you. Pocket nines on the button. KW Dragon is an aggressive player. He raises a lot pre-flop. You can see his 11% total is only behind Aces and Pun Master and God of Wrath. But he's making a nice 2.25x, my math right there, 2 1/3 x raise pre-flop. So he's coming in for a small raise, which he does a lot. Okay, so Celtic goes all in for 11 big blinds. It's folded to us. Wow. Celtic is not an aggressive player pre-flop, as his pre-flop raise percentage here shows. He only raises 4% of the time. He only 3-bets 2% of the time, which is very low. So I'm putting him on a big hand here. And pocket nines, if you're calling with pocket nines after a raise and a shove by a tight player, you are basically hoping his ace king and nothing else. I wouldn't hate the call here. I would take a lower variance approach and fold here because especially because of Celtic's tightness. If this was Pun Master reshoving or somebody like Aces or even God of Luck, I would be more inclined to come along here and even re-raise and get KW Dragon out of the way. But because it's Celtic, I think I would lean to folding. I'm predicting you call, and you do. And you lose to queens. Yeah, see, he had the third best hand he went all in with, which is what I would expect from a player that is raising and re-raising this tightly. That's why I think calling with pocket nines and hoping you have a coin flip, which you would have lost, by the way, is a bad call. So that's actually a good example of how you would use, if you have them, your HUDs, and if you don't have them, your reads on the other players to determine if calling on all in or re-raising is a good play. If Celtic had not re-raised, shoved, I would have re-raised KW Dragon because he's an aggressive player. But once he raises and there's a reshove, pocket nines is an easy fold, and I think that's a mistake to call there. Ace king in the big blind, we get a limper, and it's fold to us, and we're going to raise. 3x is a nice size. In these spots, what I like to do is, when there are limpers and I'm looking to raise, I like to figure out what my open raise size would be if there were no limpers. In this case, I usually like to raise 2x, so it would be 300. Then you add up all the limpers, in this case it's only 150, and add that to your open raise to get the amount, which is 450, which is what you do here. I might adjust that a bit bigger because we are in the big blind and we're going to be out of position for the rest of the hand, but I don't mind this raise size. You could go 475, maybe even as high as 500, but 450 is still fine. Eradicator is a fairly aggressive player, and so if he's limping with a hand that beats pocket kings so far, I'd be very surprised. I expect him to call though, and he does. Flop top pair. We're betting a third of the pot here. Wow, I'm surprised that you're taking this line. This is actually, I like the raise, the sizing you're showing. In general, I'm not sure it works necessarily in this hand because you do have top pair, and it's, yeah, this is a very polarized bet size. I think you're either very weak or very strong. You're either saying, please go away, and I'm gonna bet as little as possible to make you go away, or please call me. I expect it. Oh. So what Eradicator did is he interpreted your small raise size, and actually this is I'm impressed by this. He interpreted your small raise size as weakness, and he's pouncing on that. I'm not saying he has nothing. He may have a king of his own, and he's trying to get you off. You know, he's trying to attack your c-bet. but I wouldn't be surprised if he has nothing and he's attacking your c-bet with a bluff. Nice, so we just call there. And that's a good call because what it does is it puts 2849 in the pot and it leaves you with 2161 behind. You can either shove any turn or check call any shove on the turn, and it's a reasonable play. The sizing is such that all the money is definitely going on the turn, and if he's bluffing and you raise on the flop, you give him an opportunity to fold. But if he's bluffing and you call on the flop, you're giving an opportunity to bluff the turn, and you can get all your chips in much easier that way. So let's see. I suspect you're going to check call. No, you shove. Yeah, all the money was going in on the flop anyway. I like the play on the flop. I think you have to check call the turn and give him another chance to bluff. If he has queens, he doesn't have queens because he limp pre-flop. If he has tens or if he has ace eight, something like that, he could have 6-7 for the straight draw. You know, you never know. He may have something that he wants to bluff again, which is why you shouldn't lead out all in on the turn. Give him another chance to bluff. As it stands, all the money was going anyway because he had a king, but you have to give him another chance to bluff if he's bluffing. But you got the double up, so what do I know?